The first time Michael Jackson performed in public, he was so small they had to bring a wooden milk crate for him to stand on. But his voice was already so powerful that grown men in the audience started crying. What happened in that elementary school auditorium on March 12th, 1964, would change the course of music history forever. And it all began with a disaster that nearly canceled the Jackson brothers' performance entirely. It was a crisp spring morning at Lincoln Elementary School in Gary, Indiana. The annual talent show was just hours away, and the small auditorium was buzzing with nervous energy as students prepared for their big moment. Parents were arriving early to secure the best seats, teachers were making final adjustments to the makeshift stage, and backstage, young performers were running through their routines one last time. If this incredible story of Michael's first moment on stage moves you, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what age you first discovered your own talents. Now back to that life-changing morning in Gary. But in the Jackson family household on Jackson Street, panic was setting in. 8-year-old Marlon Jackson had woken up with a fever of 102 degrees and a throat so swollen he could barely swallow, let alone sing. The family doctor had been clear. Complete vocal rest for at least a week, maybe two. The Jackson house at 2300 Jackson Street was barely 900 square feet, with thin walls that meant everyone could hear everything. That morning, the usual sounds of breakfast preparation and children getting ready for school were replaced by hushed, worried conversations and the sound of Marlon's labored breathing from the small bedroom he shared with his brothers. Katherine Jackson moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing a warm honey and lemon mixture for Marlon's throat while trying to mask her own disappointment. She had been looking forward to this talent show for weeks, not just because her boys would be performing, but because it represented something bigger, a chance for the Jackson family to be seen as more than just another struggling household in Gary's industrial landscape. Joe Jackson sat at the small kitchen table, his work-calloused hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He'd taken the morning off from his job at Inland Steel Company, something he rarely did, as every hour away from work meant less money for the family. The talent show was supposed to be worth that sacrifice. Now it seemed like a costly mistake. The Jackson brothers had been rehearsing their three-part harmony for months, practicing in the cramped living room after dinner each night. Joe had arranged the boys in a specific formation. Jackie on the left with his strong, reliable voice, Tito in the middle with his smooth tenor, and Marlon on the right, whose higher voice provided the perfect counterpoint to his older brothers. Without Marlon, the whole arrangement would collapse. But perhaps even more important than the musical arrangement was what this performance represented to Joe Jackson. He had dreams that extended far beyond the steel mills and factory floors of Gary, Indiana. Every evening after his grueling shift, covered in industrial dust and exhausted from manual labor, Joe would sit and listen to his boys sing, imagining a different future for them. A future where talent, not just hard work, could lift a family out of poverty. "We can't perform without Marlon," 12-year-old Jackie Jackson said, his voice filled with disappointment. "The harmonies won't work with just Tito and me." Their father, Joe Jackson, paced the small living room like a caged tiger. This talent show was supposed to be the Jackson brothers' big breakthrough, their chance to show the Gary community what his boys could do. He'd been planning this moment for months, rehearsing the boys every evening after his shift at the steel mill. "There's got to be something we can do," Joe muttered, his dreams of his son's musical future seeming to slip away. That's when 5-year-old Michael Joseph Jackson, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up in his small, clear voice. "I know all the words," he said simply. "I can sing Marlon's part." The room fell silent. Joe looked at his youngest son with a mixture of disbelief and frustration. "Michael, you're 5 years old. You don't even start school until next year. This is for the big kids." But Katherine Jackson, who had been watching Michael absorb every note, every harmony, every gesture during his brother's rehearsals, had seen something that Joe hadn't yet recognized. Her youngest son didn't just watch his brothers practice, he studied them with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Let him try, Joe," Katherine said firmly. "What have we got to lose? If he can't do it, the boys just won't perform today." Joe, desperate and out of options, reluctantly agreed. "All right," he said gruffly. "Let's hear it. Michael, you sing Marlon's part. Boys, you do yours. What happened in the next 3 minutes shocked everyone in that small Gary living room. Michael didn't just know Marlon's part, he knew every part. And more than that, he sang with a precision, power, and emotional depth that seemed impossible for someone who hadn't even started kindergarten. The most remarkable thing wasn't just that Michael could sing, it was how he sang. His voice carried an instinctive understanding of timing and phrasing that professional singers spend years trying to master. When Jackie and Tito sang the opening lines, Michael didn't just wait for his turn, he listened, his body naturally swaying to the rhythm, his young mind processing the musical dynamics with a sophistication that defied his age. But what truly shocked the family was Michael's stage presence, even in their cramped living room. As he sang his part, he moved with a natural grace that seemed to come from nowhere. His small hands gestured expressively, his shoulders moved with the beat, and his eyes closed in moments of musical intensity as if he was channeling something far beyond his 5 years of experience. Catherine watched her youngest son transform before her eyes. This wasn't the shy little boy who usually hid behind her skirt when strangers visited. This wasn't the child who spoke so softly that teachers often had to lean down to hear him. This was someone else entirely. Someone who commanded attention simply by opening his mouth and letting the music flow through him. Joe, despite his skepticism, found himself leaning forward in his chair. His practical mind was already calculating possibilities. If Michael could sing like this in front of strangers, if he could maintain this level of performance under pressure, then maybe the Jackson brothers could become something more than just a local church group. Maybe they could actually make money from music. Again, Joe said when the song ended. Do it again. I want to make sure this wasn't just luck. The second performance was even better than the first. Michael's confidence had grown in those few minutes, and now he was adding his own subtle flourishes to the melody. He wasn't just copying Marlon's part, he was making it his own, improving it in ways that seemed impossible for someone who couldn't even read music yet. It was in that moment that Katherine Jackson realized she was witnessing the birth of something extraordinary. This wasn't just a talented child, this was a natural performer who had somehow been born with an instinctive understanding of how to move an audience, how to connect with people through music in a way that transcended age, experience, or training. His voice, though young and small, carried a richness and control that adults spend years trying to develop. His timing was perfect. His pitch was flawless. And most remarkably, he sang with a feeling, a connection to the music's emotion that couldn't be taught. Catherine started crying. Jackie and Tito stopped singing and just stared at their little brother in amazement. Even Joe, hardened by years of factory work and life's disappointments, stood speechless as his 5-year-old son delivered a performance that would have impressed professional musicians. Sweet Lord, Catherine whispered. Where did that come from? When the Jackson family arrived at Lincoln Elementary School that afternoon, Michael was wearing his Sunday best, a white shirt that was slightly too big for his tiny frame, dark pants that Catherine had carefully hemmed the night before, and shoes that had belonged to Marlon. He held his mother's hand tightly as they walked into the school, his big eyes taking in all the activity around him. Miss Sarah Coleman, the music teacher who organized the talent show, was surprised to see the Jackson family arrive with 4 boys instead of 3. Mr. Jackson, she said, consulting her clipboard with concern, I have the Jackson brothers scheduled. That's Jackie, Tito, and Marlon. Who's this little one? This is Michael, Joe explained. Marlon's sick with fever, so Michael's going to take his place. Miss Coleman looked down at Michael, who barely came up to her waist and her eyebrows rose in concern. Mr. Jackson, he's awfully young. Are you sure he's ready for this? Some of these children have been preparing for months. He's ready, Catherine said with quiet confidence. You'll see. The Lincoln Elementary School auditorium could hold about 180 people, and it was packed that afternoon with parents, teachers, and students. The stage was a simple wooden platform about 3 feet high with heavy curtains on either side. When it was time for the Jackson brothers to perform, Miss Coleman took the microphone with enthusiasm. Please welcome the Jackson brothers, performing You Are My Sunshine. Jackie and Tito walked onto the stage with the confidence of experienced performers. They'd done this before at church and local community events. But when Michael followed them, audible whispers rippled through the audience. That child is tiny. How old is he? Can he even reach the microphone? The microphone stand was adjusted to its lowest setting, but it was still too high for Michael. For a moment, it seemed like the performance would have to be canceled. Mr. Robert Williams, the school principal, was watching from the side of the stage. Seeing the problem, he quickly disappeared into a storage closet and returned with a wooden milk crate. "Here you go, young man," Mr. Williams said kindly, placing the crate in front of the microphone. "This should help." Michael stepped onto the crate, his small hands gripping the sides to steady himself. Now he could reach the microphone. He looked out at the audience, 180 faces staring at him with curiosity and skepticism. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. Mrs. Helen Thompson, the school pianist, began playing the gentle introduction to "You Are My Sunshine." Jackie and Tito started singing the opening verses, their voices blending nicely, but the audience was clearly waiting to see what the tiny boy on the milk crate would do. Then it was time for Michael's part. What came out of that 5-year-old body shocked everyone in the room. Michael's voice was clear, powerful, and impossibly mature. But more than technical ability, there was something else, an emotional depth, a connection to the song's meaning that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his years. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Michael sang with his eyes closed, his small body swaying slightly, completely lost in the music. He wasn't performing, he was feeling, and that feeling was pouring out of him in waves that washed over the audience like a warm embrace. The effect on the audience was immediate and profound. The skeptical whispers stopped. Parents who had been chatting with neighbors fell silent. Teachers who had been organizing programs in the back looked up in astonishment. Mr. Frank Morrison, a steel worker who had come to watch his daughter perform, later described the moment. "I was sitting there waiting for my little girl's turn, not paying much attention to the Jackson boys. Then that tiny kid opened his mouth and I swear I got chills running down my spine. My wife grabbed my arm and whispered, 'What in the world?' We'd never heard anything like it from someone so young." Mrs. Patricia Davis, who taught kindergarten at the school, was equally amazed. "I work with children Michael's age every day," she said years later. 5-year-olds can barely tie their shoes or remember to raise their hand before speaking, but this child was singing with the emotional intelligence of someone who had lived a full life. It was impossible, and yet there it was happening right in front of us. As Michael reached the climax of the song, something extraordinary happened. Several men in the audience, steel workers, factory workers, men who had spent their lives doing hard physical labor in America's industrial heartland, began wiping their eyes. The pure emotion in that little boy's voice had touched something deep in their hearts. When Michael finished singing, there was a moment of complete silence, as if the audience needed time to process what they had just witnessed. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever, and for a terrifying moment. Michael thought he had done something wrong. Then the applause began. But it wasn't the polite, supportive applause typical of elementary school talent shows. This was genuine, thunderous, standing ovation applause. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering with real emotion. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Parents who had come only to see their own children perform were calling out for an encore. Miss Coleman, who had been skeptical about letting such a young child perform, was standing in the wings with tears streaming down her face. "In 20 years of teaching," she later told the local newspaper, "I have never seen a performance like that. That child has been touched by something special." The applause continued for a full 5 minutes. Michael, standing on his milk crate, didn't know what to do. He looked at his brothers, who were smiling and clapping along with the audience. He looked for his mother, who was crying tears of joy in the front row. Finally, Michael did what came naturally. He smiled shyly, waved with his small hand, and took a careful bow. After the talent show, the Jackson family was surrounded by teachers, parents, and community members who wanted to talk about Michael's performance. "You need to get that boy professional training," said Mr. Charles Washington, who directed the choir at the local Baptist church. "That's a once-in-a-generation voice." "I've never seen anything like it," said Mrs. Elizabeth Roberts, a music teacher from the high school who had come to scout for talent. "If you're not already thinking about a professional career for that boy, you should be." Joe Jackson, who had been skeptical about Michael performing just hours earlier, was now seeing possibilities he hadn't imagined. Catherine, who had always believed in Michael's gift, felt vindicated and overwhelmed with pride. But for Michael himself, the experience was both exhilarating and overwhelming. The attention, the praise, the excitement, it was a lot for a 5-year-old to process. "Mama," Michael said quietly as they drove home, "did I do good?" Catherine turned in her seat to look at her youngest son, her heart swelling with love and pride. "Baby, you did more than good. You showed everyone what I've always known. You have a very special gift." That night, after all the children were in bed, Joe and Catherine Jackson made a decision that would change their family's destiny forever. "Michael has something extraordinary," Joe said. "We need to be smart about this. We need to get him and his brothers performing professionally." What started as a last-minute replacement at an elementary school talent show became the catalyst for creating the Jackson 5. Within months, Joe had the brothers performing at local clubs and talent competitions throughout the region. Within 2 years, they were gaining serious attention from record scouts. Within 5 years, they would be signed to Motown Records and become international superstars. Miss Sarah Coleman, the music teacher who organized that talent show, kept a photo from the event for the rest of her life. In the photo, you can barely see Michael behind his older brothers, standing on his wooden milk crate, but his smile is radiant. "People always asked me if I knew that day that Michael would become the king of pop," Miss Coleman said in a 1985 interview. "The honest answer is no. I didn't know he would become Michael Jackson, the global superstar. But I absolutely knew I had witnessed something extraordinary. That child didn't just sing the song, he lived it, he breathed it, he made everyone in that room feel it." Mr. Robert Williams, the principal who brought the milk crate that allowed Michael to reach the microphone, later joked that it was the most important contribution he ever made to music history. "I was just trying to help a little boy reach his dreams," Mr. Williams recalled with a laugh. "I had no idea that little boy would grow up to be the most famous entertainer in the world. But I'm proud that my old milk crate was part of the beginning." That wooden crate, by the way, was kept by the Jackson family for years as a memento of Michael's first public performance, a reminder of humble beginnings and the power of taking chances on young talent. March 12, 1964, at Lincoln Elementary School wasn't just the first time Michael Jackson performed in public. It was the moment when a natural gift was revealed to the world, when a destiny was set in motion, and when everyone present got their first glimpse, though nobody knew it at the time, of someone who would change music forever. Michael Jackson's first performance reminds us that greatness often announces itself early, that talent demands to be expressed and shared. But more than that, it shows us the importance of the people who recognize and nurture that talent. Catherine, who believed in him when others thought he was too young. Joe, who saw the possibilities and created opportunities. Miss Coleman, who allowed him to perform. Mr. Williams, who found a way to help a small boy reach his big dreams. The first time Michael Jackson performed in public, he needed a milk crate to reach the microphone. But even then, from the very beginning, his voice was big enough to fill any room, touch any heart, and change the course of music history forever. Every legend has a beginning. For Michael Jackson, it was a spring afternoon in Gary, Indiana, a wooden milk crate, and a song about sunshine that lit up the world. He spent the rest of his life doing exactly that, bringing sunshine to millions of people around the globe through the power of his extraordinary gift. If this incredible story of Michael Jackson's first performance moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss these amazing stories from music history. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that greatness often starts small, but dreams big. Have you ever witnessed someone's first moment of discovering their gift? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your stories too.